Lamar Jackson is maturing right before the Baltimore Ravens' eyes. We talk about how Eric DeCosta's positive comments and some cause for concern, and a lot more coming up next year on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here on this Purple Friday and making us your first listen each and every day. And just a part of your day in general, we're free and available for you, all podcasting platforms. That includes video form on YouTube, audio form, wherever you get your shows, 4 or 5 days a week of Baltimore Ravens content, plus some bonus episodes as well. Actually, I have a bonus episode out tomorrow with the maker of the quarterback tier list himself on The Athletic, Mike Sando, who provides insight onto where Lamar was ranked among coaches, executives, players, and so much more. So be sure to subscribe. Again, really appreciate all the support. And whether you're an everydayer, first-time listener, or somewhere in the middle, welcome or welcome back. We have Qadry Ismail in the building today, former Ravens wide receiver, Super Bowl champion, messing with his setup back there. I see him getting everything right. The setup has to be right for Q. I think he has it right now. He's laughing, Q. How you doing, man? How's the setup treating you?
It is good. I am like the ultimate in studio lighting, and I'm probably going to keep figuring and tinkering, and hopefully I will get it to where it looks like I'm not too washed out, not too shadowed. I am just right.
Hey, it is a very underrated part of doing these things, is getting the lighting right, getting the sets right. And I know your Lumen knowledge has evolved over the course of the time we've been working together. And so I think it looks good, though. I think you have everything looking right, looking good. So it's always fun to get the lighting just right. I have to do it, actually, the fish tank. If my light is a little twisted, it glares off of the fish tank a little bit. And I'm just like, can't do that. So always a fun time getting the set right. But Q, the Ravens play football in less than a week. It's really exciting. Opening up against Kansas City in Arrowhead. It's a game everybody's looking for, everybody's anticipating, but we still have a little time to go. So we're going to talk about some big Ravens storylines today, one of which was Lamar Jackson joined the lounge. Ryan making Garrett Downey did a great job over there with Lamar. And one of the big quotes that ended up coming out of that was Lamar talking about his leadership and kind of how it has evolved. And essentially he is maturing right before our eyes, the Ravens' eyes. And it's a really cool thing to see. And Lamar talked about it and said, look, this is never coming from a bad place, because, there have been times where I think he said Ronnie Stanley, if I'm not mistaken, was like, hey, don't get on the guys. Don't get on the offensive line that much. Because we know Lamar Q can be a very passionate person. He's a competitor. We know that. But he said it's never coming from a bad place. It's always motivation to my guys. They're not used to me speaking that much. On the field, they're seeing another side of me like, nah, I'm hungry, so everybody has got to be hungry. And we know Lamar wants to win. He wants a Super Bowl so badly. But we see those moments from him where he's trying to coach up his guys. He's trying to get guys in the right place. You and I talked about this, Q, a few weeks ago, where you and your training camp's observations said that Lamar was being very vocal, getting on his guys, but it not being like, oh, I'm going to show you up and make you feel bad. It's let's get better together. Let's understand each other more. I mean, what can you say about Lamar and kind of how he has become more vocal, how he is growing into a different kind of leader? Not that he wasn't a leader before, but I just think he's evolving into a different kind of one now.
Yeah, so when I look at Lamar Jackson's growth process year to year, now we're looking at year 7. He's no longer a young buck. He's a full-on veteran. He is one of the elder statesmen on the team. Yes, he is young, but yet at the same time, 7 years is 7 years. With that said, I've played with some Hall of Famers. I've played with Warren Moon. I played with Dan Marino. I literally was not only playing with, but roomed with throughout my training camp with Randall Cunningham, one of the all-time greats quarterbacks to play. I literally played with Peyton Manning my final year in the league. And the biggest takeaway I take from all of them, plus all of the years as an NFL analyst, all the quarterbacks, they all have this inner drive to win and as I say with Roquan, I use this phrase, a high tide raises all ships. Where you're not getting paid the mega millions to be quiet. You're not being paid the mega millions to not wear the heavy crown that's on your head. Heavy is the hat that wears the crown. And in this particular case, I think for Lamar Jackson, it is another step in the growth process for him to, bring all those other guys that are integral parts and pieces to his success to the table, to that competitive, let's do this table. And you can't do it alone. He's seen it where, his regular season resume speaks for itself. With that said, it's a situation now where you need other pieces to step up and play extremely well, whether it be the offensive line, whether it be the captain of the offensive line and Ronnie Stanley, making sure his guys are ready to go, whether it be his wide receiving core, his tight end core, heck, even some of the words of encouragement or, poking the bear, if you will, from the defensive side of things, getting guys encouraged, getting guys ready to go out there and recognize that to win, to beat the best, you got to be the best. You're the AFC championship game. So therefore, you got the toughest schedule in the AFC North and one of the toughest schedules in the AFC. All hands on deck. Let's go.
Yeah, and it's big because I think for Lamar, there's been this misconception of Lamar's leading the right way now where he wasn't before. I don't think that's true. I think that Lamar, even though he wasn't as vocal, he still was a leader on that offense, being the quarterback and making sure that his guys are ready to go. But now that he is kind of taking that more frontal role, I guess, as a leader and being more vocal, it gives guys opportunities. I mean, you had talked about it too, where he and Nelson Aguilar were getting on the same page. He and Rashad Bateman have always been trying to work back. And, if Lamar, you don't have to be the rah-rah, hype him up leader guy. But if you lead, Lamar certainly does lead by example in terms of some of the work ethic that he has and, him being a passionate player and on the field, him wanting it. But it can't just be Lamar who wants it. It can't just be Lamar and Roquan and then everybody's like, okay, we'll just follow these guys. Like you said, you got to bring these guys up to that level. You have to rise that tide, the tide and the ships and everything you've been saying forever now about Roquan. It now is applying to Lamar. And now that he has gone on the lounge and he has kind of said, well, yeah, guys aren't really used to me doing that. Guys aren't really used to me speaking up that much and speaking that much. That to me shows that it always has been an evolution process, a growth process. And Lamar is, I guess, I don't know if the word is ascending or not, but he's ascending to this plane of okay, this is what I want to be as a leader now. I'm going to be more vocal and I'm going to let it be known hey, we're doing this right. That's awesome. I'm going to cheer you on. I'm going to make sure that you know it. Or, hey, we're doing this wrong. Let's get on it and let's fix it, especially during training camp when you want to get all those kinks out of the way. You want to get all the knots out of the way. That to me is really important as well.
It's interesting how you present it because every level that you go to, whether it be high school, college, obviously now here in the pros, to be successful takes such an extreme commitment. You can't sit back and relax. You can't, take your foot off of the proverbial gas pedal of success when you're riding down the highway of adversity. It's about, look, we're ready for anything. And in football, it's the ultimate team sport. Those Hall of Famers or those top tier quarterbacks that I played with, I mean, there was a level of expectation on them, but there was a level of them communicating and helping guys out to get the most out of them. Peyton Manning was such an incredible grinder. I used to be fascinated by when we would lose a game. He would sit in his locker and he would look at the book and he would flip through, page by page and looking at each drive and, trying to figure it out why. I think that's that spirit of excellence that drove him to be a multiple-time league MVP, but a multiple-time Super Bowl presenter and a Super Bowl champion. And so for Lamar, his legacy has been, I want to bring a Super Bowl championship to the Baltimore Ravens to the city of Baltimore believe that. We believe it, Lamar. And Lamar is recognizing, okay, I have 7 years. My resume speaks for itself. We have been on the cusp of it, but now let's go ahead and take it to the next. Let's bring home a championship. You got a Patrick Mahomes that is sitting out there with multiple and trying to go for 3 in a row. Obviously, the GOAT and Tom Brady is retired, but now you got some young bucks who are Lamar's peers. You know, you got the guy up in Buffalo. My guy, I'm telling you right now, in his mind, he's like, yeah, my team needs me, and I am on the hot seat. You got Joe Burrow over there in Cincinnati. Joe is saying to himself, look, I've been there. I know what it feels like. Doggone it. I gave Matthew Stafford a chance to have a championship. I missed out on it. I want to get back there. So now he has to change. Deshaun Watson, he's figuring it out. He's trying to figure out how to, be in this AFC North, be a top-tier quarterback. There's a lot of quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers is like, man, I've been there, done that, but I haven't been there, done that in a long time. I need to figure it out. Every quarterback has their own drama that they need to go through to help themselves, to put themselves in a position to win. And I think that's something that Lamar is saying, and I appreciate him verbally saying it, because now puts him and his teammates on notice.
Yeah, and I agree with you, where it seems like we are seeing the evolution of not just Lamar Jackson in this role, but also other guys as well, where Kyle Hamilton has actively spoken about him taking on a bigger leadership role. With all these vets that ended up leaving the Ravens, younger guys are going to have to step into those roles and take on those leadership vocal roles. And coming up in the second part of the show, we're going to be rounding out our leadership segment with Marlon Humphrey, who had a very inspiring speech he gave to the team after a practice, and then getting into what Eric DeCosta had to say, talking about roster upgrades, interest from other teams, and maybe some concerns. Stay tuned. A lot to get to on the show. First, the show is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. It is no secret that I work very late into the night, and that can become pretty tiring, but 5 Hour Energy fixes tired fast. Whether you have a long list to do for work, take a 5 Hour Energy shot so you can check everything off of your list. If you're like me, you always have a lot to do, a lot of projects. Make sure you're not forgetting the most essential supply, which is a 5 Hour Energy shot with 0 sugar and a convenient portable size. It's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. The 5 Hour Energy website has flavors galore like watermelon, tropical burst, grape, berry, and more. And there's a flavor for everyone. You can try them all. On the site, you even have the option to build your own 12-pack or 24-pack. You choose the flavors, and it is delivered right to your door. So if you go to 5hourenergy.com, that is the number 5hourenergy.com, and get some 5 Hour Energy product today. You can use my promo code LOCKEDONFB to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code does not go into subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. We're back. Our second segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher and Qadry Ismail still here with you on this Purple Friday. Appreciate everybody for being here, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day. Be sure to subscribe, follow along, video form and audio form. Now, Marlon Humphrey has been known as the funny guy sometimes, the guy who tweets out the food opinions, and obviously a very good football player in the corner as well. Don't get it twisted with that. But from a leadership perspective, everybody looks to Roquan on that defense. Is kind of the guy that we have talked about. And it's like, okay, who's leader of that defense? It's Roquan Smith. He's the guy that gives the inspirational speeches and gets everybody fired up, ready to go. Well, there was a little bit during the Ravens Wired episode. Marlon Humphrey ended up getting in the center of the huddle after practice and talked about how he is trying to see things through a new lens, about how this training camp, every day, he said he's been trying to enjoy every single moment, talking about, even like with Zach Orr, like how he had to kind of abruptly step away from the game, about how if this was like my last opportunity, what would I do with it? How would I feel if it was my last? And then went on to talk about, he said, the last thing in life outside of real world life, inside of job life, is to get a ring. That's all I want. And said to keep going, keep building. And it was about a minute and a half or so of Marlon, delivering this passionate speech to the team. And I think for a lot of people, it was like, yeah, let's go. Like, let's do this. Let's make sure that, we can go out on the right foot, because you never know, Q. Football, sports, it's so fickle sometimes, where you never know like when your contention window is going to close, when certain players are going to leave. And then we talked about this during the 2023 season where that roster felt so perfect and that coaching staff felt so perfect and you still couldn't get the job done. And you only have one shot with that group. You have one shot every year with your specific group, and then it changes in some way, shape, or form. I mean, how does it feel to you to see Marlon kind of take that front and center role, even if for just this moment, and kind of deliver his passion to the team like that?
Yeah, I don't think it's a just this moment type of thing. I think when you are Marlon Humphreys and you have the resume that you have the floor to speak. And I think it's cool that, he has a lighter side to him, but I think there have been plenty of times behind closed doors where he's been able to give some sage wisdom advice and, be that guy that everybody is looking at to say, hey, look, you know what? You need to just play better. You need to recognize this. I need to build you up, and I'm going to build you up. Hey, what's going on with you? Whatever those conversations that he's had, it was cool to see that he addressed it with the guys and the group that he was addressing it with on the Wired show. And I think for, those men who recognize that, yeah, he got paid, but we all know this is a fickle business. You can be here and be gone the next. You got to take advantage of those opportunities to recognize, field a good team, and say, look, we have an opportunity to win. I'm hoping he has an opportunity to win. I'm in a position where I have seen the 2000 Billy Cundiff game turn into an inspiration, and in 2012 be a scenario where, calendar year 2013, they're hoisting up the Lombardi as Super Bowl 47 champions. So sometimes when you go through adversity, it pulls you together and recognize the finite window. If Marlon, for this version of the Ravens, 2023 into 2024, this version of the Ravens, if calendar year 2025, they hoisted up that Lombardi, you and I are going to have one hell of a podcast.
You can say that again. It is going to be absolutely electric on here. You might have to get the champagne popping for that one, Q, because it's going to be a whole heck of a time. But you're right. I like how you put it. Marlon does have that lighter side. That's what I meant when I was saying, he's the funny guy, can joke around, can make you laugh, but we know that he's also a very serious competitor and wants to win. All these guys are competitors and want to win. And to see everybody taking on leadership roles like that, I think is very important. But speaking of cornerbacks, Eric DeCosta, who is not a cornerback, he's the general manager, spoke to the media and talked about the cornerback position. Let's transition into what Eric DeCosta had to say now, because there were a lot of really interesting tidbits that he had to say, specifically about Brandon Stephens, where he acknowledged Brandon Stephens and talked about how, he's kind of evolved. And if you remember, Q, I mean, his journey has been very here and then there and then here and then there with safety corner, started off in college as a running back. But Eric DeCosta said that, Stephens is a really talented player, but knows that he wants to keep him long-term, but it will sometimes be a challenge just based off of, well, we know what top cornerbacks get in this league. We know how that market is booming for everybody right now. And if Brandon Stephens can build upon his 2023 season and have another phenomenal year, he evolves in certain aspects. Marlon Humphrey is still on the contract books. Brandon Stephens would be another guy that would probably sign a big money deal. It could be tough to keep both of those guys. So obviously we still have to have this season play out. Brandon Stephens will be in a Ravens uniform in 2024. But do you maybe look ahead and say, well, there's a little uncertainty in that corner room with the top two guys because we don't know who's staying and who's going right now?
I don't want to necessarily look ahead because that's what we've been doing it our entire offseason. So now here's the season. You are a master of your offseason. I am loving this in season, and I'm going to stay in my zen. However, I will say, Brandon Stephens has built up leverage. Leverage is king. When you are a corner in this league, or DN, or left tackle, or quarterback, or a running back, well, maybe not a running back, but if you're a dynamic wide receiver or a dynamic playmaker at the tight end position, then you got leverage, you're going to get paid. With all that said, I think for Brandon Stevens, showing his versatility, showing his mental toughness to continue to overcome and adapt is remarkable. I am anxiously awaiting to see what it looks like this season for him as he goes up against the Jamar Chases of the world that's trying to get this mega deal, the Amari Coopers of the world, over in Pittsburgh with Pickens, or Pickett. It is one of those situations where if you're in a spot where you can lock down these top-ranked receivers, you're going to get paid. CeeDee Lamb, we going down to Dallas. And I believe we're 5-1 versus the Cowboys all time, something like that, as a Ravens organization. I remember scoring against the Cowboys myself, so I have one of those in the win column. But he's going to go up against CeeDee Lamb. He's going to be a top guy. Hey, we know Thursday night, Kansas City got a speedster in Worthy. You got Travis Kelce. Thankfully, we don't have Hollywood Brown because then you have a double speedster moment. But you got some, we don't know what the Rashee Rice situation is going to even be unless that comes down in the next couple of days or whatever. But the point I'm making is we got him now. See how I did that? See, I analyzed the receivers that he might potentially be facing. And I'm saying now, not the future, now we are happy to have Brandon Stevens on the roster. We don't worry about the offseason and don't worry about his money and his salary cap or none of that. We just are happy to have him now.
Man, I knew as the question was coming out of my mouth, I said, man, Q's going to hate this one. He is going to hate this. I mean, so with that, Q, I guess I should ask you next about Bleacher Report's article where they said the Ravens should sign DeAndre Hopkins next offseason. I'm sure you want to talk about that, don't you? Where we're looking at, hey, 2024 season, we got all that still to come. Now we're looking 2025. We're doing a whole 2025 offseason preview before 2024 is even over. I know that, yeah, and I remember this all started with you because we talked about DeAndre Hopkins for like 2 months straight when we were still in December of that year. But let's talk roster moves that actually could have happened in the now, where Eric DeCosta ends up saying that they did get some inquiries from other teams about some of their players, particularly in the cornerback room. But Eric DeCosta said that they were content with their guys. They liked what they had, and they decided to kind of rebuff those offers. And again, I'm not shocked that there was some interest. I think that the Ravens have built up, and we know they love to invest pretty hefty amount of resources into their secondary. There are always some trades that are made before cut down day happens, and you see like conditional 6th and 7ths thrown around and guys getting new opportunities. But to me, it feels like the Ravens felt really confident in their roster, and I'm not shocked they didn't, make any moves like that where they gave away talent because the Ravens need all the talent they can get.
I think Eric recognizes, and I saw this statistic with one of our fellow Raven beat writers and columnists and podcasters, the whole Raven media community, where they were saying they do such a good job of it's yes, the star players are the star players, but to make up the rest of the bottom portion of the roster, guys that can't make it on the Ravens are littered throughout the league because of the Ravens' ability to assimilate talent and develop it. And so you can't keep everybody, but other teams really appreciate the Ravens as a good team, and they pluck those players. So with that said, I think it's smart on Eric to recognize for corner, and we both have seen it, where you think you have a position of strength and it's just 1 or 2 injuries, and now all of a sudden you're looking down, the barrel of cornerback weakness rather than cornerback strength and depth.
Yeah, and I've said it 10 million times. You start the year with 50 healthy corners. Seems like every year you end it with 2. And that's not just a Ravens thing. It certainly has been for them. But every team needs quality offensive linemen and quality secondary members at every single point in the season. You can never have enough corners. You can never have enough offensive linemen. And I think that's a point that every team goes through throughout the course of the year. Coming up, though, we're going to be continuing to talk about Eric DeCosta's comments, plus get into some roster and practice squad analysis. Stay tuned. A lot to get to here on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, formula for winning championships is also what keeps ride or die alive. eBay Motors hasn't been the need to maintain a vehicle, level up performance, superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether they're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. Always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed to fit your part, it's guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. Or the parts needed, the prices you want. It's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items, low exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed to fit, only available to U.S. customers. We are back rounding out Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher and Qadry Ismail still here with you. Really appreciate everybody for tuning in with us today. Crazy, Q, that the Ravens football season is just less than 1 week away. I know it's been a long off season. I know for you especially, because you want to be in the now, obviously.
Yes.
We know that. But it just feels like there was so much excitement surrounding the season. But also I think people are saying, well, we know this team is a good regular season team. Let's just get to the playoffs already. But I think the regular season does have plenty of perks, chemistry, getting acclimated with your guys, and building momentum up to the playoffs. But we do know that this Ravens team, they know what they have to do during the regular season.
I think for the Ravens, it's not good enough to make the playoffs. I like how Lamar was saying, we experienced the divisional rounds. We went now and hosted an AFC Championship game. I think for him and the team, it is the progression, and every team is different. I mean, I even saw it with Peyton Manning, my former teammate, where it took him a minute. And then finally, once you see it, taste it, and understand it, and then all of a sudden the floodgates open up. Can't always be the Kansas City Chiefs blessed with a coach that has a awesome quarterback combination in Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, or the former dynasty that was the New England Patriots for all those years. I think it's a situation where each team, each organization, you learn how to win differently. And I think for this organization to get to the AFC Championship game, wow, this is what it feels like. Wow, this is the home crowd. Wow, we got to get back there. We were one game away. We, as a fan base, have experienced it again, like I said, 2012, which turned into a Super Bowl 47 championship the following year. But got to go through it from a player's aspect of things. Joe Flacco is not coming through that door. Michael Orr is no longer coming through that door. We know Anquan Bolden ain't coming through that door. Therefore, this new breed of guys that's on this 53-man roster plus the practice squad, whoop, whoop, it is a situation where, they got to go through their experiences and they got to feel and understand and draw together as a team to recognize this year's opportunity to potentially win, to get an opportunity to potentially go down New Orleans and honor two men and Joe D, and obviously hometown hero Jacoby Jones.
Yeah, I'm a big person who loves the growth aspect, right? Where the Ravens they've done the wild card thing, they've done the division round thing now and beaten Houston, and now you're talking about AFC Championship, where you're right, they do have that experience. If this team is a wild card exit again, that's a pretty big disappointment. If this team makes it to the divisional round and then folds, it's a pretty big disappointment, because this team has Super Bowl aspirations. We've talked about it with leadership and what the goals are of this team. And to me, I think that, the players getting their experience is always big. Lamar getting that moment is always big. But now you got to build on it. You have to continue to build and not regress. That, to me, is the really big part here. But going back to Eric DeCosta, Q, had a couple of comments about maybe he's hinting at some potential moves either before the season or during the season. Talked about the quarterback room, not Lamar Jackson, obviously. We know he's the starter, and that's going to stay that way. But the backups, there was some backup quarterback controversy with Josh Johnson, although I thought he proved enough in the final 2 games to, earn that backup job. Devin Leary did not make the roster. He's on the practice squad, but was asked about the quarterback room. DeCosta said, well, we have an MVP, so I think we're pretty happy there. We like the room, but that doesn't mean we won't add another guy, which we could do at some point. Now, Tyler Huntley, old friend, was released by Cleveland on Thursday. The expectation is he goes back to Cleveland's practice squad, but are you content with the backup quarterback situation right now with Josh Johnson and having Devin Leary on the practice squad, or would you rather see them go out there and maybe get somebody like DeCosta might be hinting at?
This is a tough one. I'll admit I have an affinity for Devin Leary, the person, and what he is as a young man and his journey through college, obviously, through this portion of training camp, 40 days that he had to do his thing. At the same time, I also recognize he struggled mightily. And I think there is, the potential for him to grow. That being put aside, I think what the Ravens need is a Josh Johnson type of a mindset to help out a Lamar see, feel, and understand things from a sideline player's perspective to go along with what a coach / T. Martin will be. However, God forbid something happens to Lamar. Yeah, I could see Eric saying, you know what, how can we fully make this room a little bit stronger than what we saw? That's always a challenge. And that's a challenge with every position. But yeah, we're talking about quarterback position, and that's always going to be the challenge.
It will be. And DeCosta also talked about flexibility but to potentially make in-season trades, which we know he has been very adept to doing. And he said right now there's not flexibility because he mentioned they're probably over the cap after paying the practice squad guys, but they'll make the necessary moves to get under and be compliant. But they said that, they want to have some money to spend and that they will have some money to spend if a player is available that we think can help us be the best team we can be. And we know Eric DeCosta is always kind of out and about trying to find that next player that can come in and help, whether it's at a position of need or not. He's always looking for that guy. It wouldn't shock me if the Ravens made an in-season trade. They didn't last year, but more often than not, Eric DeCosta is looking, and with a team that has Super Bowl aspirations, he's hinting that, hey, you know what? If there's that perfect fit, like Roquan was, like Marcus Peters was, like Calais Campbell was, we'll go out there and get them. And look, if they bring in somebody like that, I'm not complaining whatsoever.
I love that. The Marcus Peters, the ability to get a guy that made some mega splash plays. I saw your post on X where Marcus Peters was picking off the now Pittsburgh Steelers starting quarterback in Russell Wilson. That was classic. That was the ultimate troll move. The cap to you.
Thank you.
With that said, I know that, yeah, if you can get a guy like that, and shoot, I'm all for it. I mean, I just think when you look at this league, one man's trash is another man's treasure. And it is about the ability to keep your eyes open and making sure that when you have that opportunity to get a guy to be on the same page with not only, your scouting staff, but also in this particular case, your head coach and John Harbaugh. And I think they both do a great job of communicating well with one another. That's their superpower. Yeah, is their ability to communicate well with one another and not, kind of have that front office clashing with the coaches and it not really working out.
And that is something that I don't necessarily, just being able to cover the team and watch what they do. Like, I don't take that for granted because there are plenty of organizations that don't have that, where there is, whether you want to call it dysfunction or just lack of communication or lack of a shared goal. Like, there is one goal over here, another goal over there, and two, decision makers are on different pages. With the Ravens, that's not the case, and they wholeheartedly believe in, everything they do. And while every decision might not be 100% like, oh yeah, I'm with you on this 100%, they come to an agreement based off of two different points where it's not anything where it's like, oh, now there's bad blood or now one guy's getting what they want and the other doesn't. It's a lot more complicated than that. But Eric DeCosta also talked about the offensive line, and wasn't the most confident answer I've ever heard from Eric DeCosta in terms of a positional group. And look, I think the concern for a lot of people right now is how are they going to respond after losing 3 starters, going pretty young on the line as a whole with those guys. Eric DeCosta saying, quote, there's still a little bit of unknown because we haven't played as a unit in games. Talked about Tyler Linderbaum getting hurt early in camp and said that across the board, they made the decision to start building up the offensive line with young players. Talked about enforcing the salary cap league. You can't build a team with veterans at every position. You can't pay everybody, which is very true. He was excited about Roger Rosengard and excited about Andrew Voorhees, talked about his excitement for the future, but did say, quote, we might have a couple of hiccups along the way, but we've started to build from the bottom up, and I think a year from now we'll be in a great place. Well, as you said, Q, we're not in a year from now. We are in the now. we're in the now. So in the now, do you kind of echo what Eric DeCosta is saying here, where, hey, in a year it could be great, but there might be some hiccups along the way to start this thing off?
Yeah, the hiccups along the way, I mean, that's a tough one. And I get the hiccups, and I get what you're saying as far as Roger Rosengard, and I get what you're saying as far as, just Voorhees playing after missing an entire year, rehabbing with his ACL. I think there's going to be, a level of chemistry that needs to be developed. Here's the thing. How are you going to feel in your psyche in these next few weeks, with the Las Vegases and the Kansas Cities and the Cowboys and the Cincinnatis of the world? Like, how are you going to feel as far as your chemistry coming together? That's ultimately going to help you when you get to the end of the season, when all of a sudden you're looking at that Christmas date. And the next thing you know, you got another game coming up real quick right afterwards. I mean, there's a lot that goes on in this season, number one. Number two, your ability to weather different micro storms that you're going to be presented with. I think for Eric, he's saying we're probably going to have some of those early season micro storms across the offensive line, and hopefully they can weather through it.
Yeah, and they're going to have to. But I do appreciate that he mentioned Linderbaum, because what I've been saying, and I know we've talked about it, you and I, is that continuity in training camp is really important, and they haven't really had that. It's been Ben Cleveland, it's been Nick Samak, and it's not about Linderbaum. Like, Linderbaum will step out there, he's going to be fine. There are no issues with Linderbaum. But it's about him playing next to now 2 young players instead of John Simpson and Kevin Zeitler. It's about the young guys getting up to speed, plus obviously them having to go out there, and they've made their decisions. John Harbaugh revealed, but we don't know who it's going to be yet. We're still kind of in wait and see mode. So it's going to be interesting, but the Ravens did finalize their 53-man roster. They have all but one spot on their practice squad filled up. What were your initial reactions? Did you think they made the right moves? I mean, they were able to keep everybody they wanted to. I mean, the practice squad, they didn't lose anybody to waivers. They were able to get all their young guys there, but do you like the way that it turned out for them?
I do. This is obviously the first camp that I've gone to this many consecutive days in a row in about 2 decades. And typically when I'm sitting there as an analyst, I just need to see 1 or 2 camps, see the preseason games, and then I'm ready to say, all right, regular season, bring it on. But this year it was really cool to watch, the maturation process of a lot of the young players. Clearly, I got skin in the game. Clearly, from a Qadry Ismail standpoint, not my words, but the words of my other colleagues who have been there throughout camp, plus what also some of the coaches have echoed, is that, every single day he's made some form of fashion of a play and has shown up, whether it been blocking in a running game, pass blocking, being out in routes. You're talking about a guy who played quarterback, transitions over to receiver, and then transitions in a finite amount of time, less than 40 days, into a tight end position, was 8th on the depth chart, and now is on the practice squad. So that's 1. 2, when you look at the way the top draft choice in Nate Wiggins played, very impressive for that young man. I'm curious to see how he's going to mature and get into his groove. I know it's a little bit of a challenge in the Packers practice joint practice, but so what? That's how you get better. I think when you look at the second-year players, the Ajabos, Robinsons, I went into camp high on them. I saw some flashes. Kansas City is going to be like, woo, no joke. And I'm curious as to how they're going to handle, that bright light scenario. I thought it was really cool how, we talked about Brandon Stevens, but two guys, and, I know we talked previously as far as Ronnie Stanley going throughout the entire training camp, but Marlon Humphrey going throughout the entire training camp, especially after his offseason OTAs kind of just really, having some nagging stuff, that kind of concerned me. But he really aced it. And so moves-wise, as far as Eric DeCosta, I loved how he got, Jackson off the street to kind of buffer the safety room. Really cool how Bo Braid, he knew he was on a bubble. Yeah. And I need to step up. And he did. He really did. He shined in that last Packers game. That put him over the top. Oh, that's saying something. I think TJ Tampa, let homeboy come back healthy. Don't sleep on him. I promise you, he's going to be a factor. I think, just the bigger picture of the offensive line, as we just talked about, if Tyler Linderbaum, whatever his, neck issues are, if he gets back into the groove and all that, I think they're going to be okay with him anchoring it down. Yeah, Faalele, there's some things there I thought, could have been more of, but okay. It's a progression. Let's see how it all unfolds.
Yeah, that line is going to be really important for them this season. We know that. It all starts up front, offensively, defensively. So exciting times for the Ravens. Football is almost back, Q. That's all I got for you. I appreciate you tuning in here with me and making sure that you get all your Ravens knowledge out for all of our listeners and watchers. It's always a blast having you. Please tell people where they can find you and what you're working on as always.
MissilTraining.com. MissilTraining.com is where you can find me. 6 years old, 85-year-olds, movement and human sports performance. So you want to be a sports performance person, athlete, looking to improve. If you're a person that is want to improve your fitness and your human movement, got some aches and pains that you want to get addressed and looked at and have some longevity to your life and lifestyle, Missile Training is where it's at. WJZ, you're going to check me out this fall on Purple Pregame. Every week, you'll see me on Sundays. CBS, check me out there. However, Locked On Ravens, Kevin Ostreicher and I tag teaming it every single week. You're going to see us talking it, breaking it all down. And stay tuned. We got some things. Kevin Ostreicher and I and Ryan Ripken, we're going to be, having some opportunity to talk some shop. We got those things in the mix. So cool things coming up this season. It's going to be a ton of fun.
It 100% is going to. And for more on Q, if you're interested in Missile Training, obviously that link will be in the description. Check him out again. All those links to Q's work in the description down below. But that's all I have for you today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you for tuning in, for watching and listening today. We're going to be back here tomorrow with a bonus episode, talking with Mike Stando of The Athletic as he breaks down the national perspective and coach, GM, player perspective of Lamar Jackson. Stay tuned. I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.